Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And it's that time again. It's time to remind you that Patreon is not your friend.
Yeah.
We hate to keep dunking on Patreon, but every time we think Patreon has mended its ways,
I would say chilled out, but
there's always another example of them overreaching, kicking people off their platform for nebulous reasons, and usually it's related to them creating content outside of Patreon. We're not talking about, people posting porno or really extreme political views on the platform itself. We're talking about Patreon policing you everywhere you go and deciding whether or not you're a good person, whether or not you deserve to have a Patreon.
Right,
not.
and we've seen them do things like ask people to show them their Google Drive to make sure nothing else was on it they didn't like, even if it wasn't stuff you were putting on Patreon. They were trying to police people on other projects and things, and they are a payment processor.
Yeah, at the end of the day, all they do is take a fee off of your hard work. They are a way to facilitate, content creators and fans of that content.
They made themselves a middleman, is what they did.
And to do that, they take a pretty steep fee. They stick it to your own patrons. They pass the buck on to your patrons.
And they stole the model anyway from webcomics and things like that early on. They've actually said so.
Yeah, they've said so. So, people ask us all the time, how do you support Clownfish TV? We don't have a Patreon.
We're not going to either.
No, we're not going to. Every time I sort of think about it, I'm like, well, maybe we should do something because a lot of people are over there. Something stupid happens. We have another example. In this case, it's Sydney Watson, who is a political YouTuber, getting banned from Patreon. But again, not for content she posted on Patreon, but for content existing or something outside of Patreon that someone had flagged. And this is usually how it happens. Somebody finds something you said or did or posted somewhere else on the internet. They bring it to Patreon's attention, and then Patreon pulls your account down, but they never really give you a concrete example of what you did specifically to violate their terms of service.
So if people are out there that lean the political way they agree with, and they are harassing other people and they get flagged, do they lose their Patreon too?
No. No, they don't. It also depends on your own political leanings. Now, I did watch part of her video. I'm not familiar with her. I don't watch, be honest, I do not watch a lot of political commentators.
We don't. People
think we do, but
we're not very political, other than the fact that we're just tired of politics being shoved into everything.
Yeah.
We're not, we just want to have fun.
But I did watch her video because we've been following this situation, since the Sargon of Akkad, and he's another one I
never watched ever. I never even heard of him until it went down.
Who he was. But I watched the situation because I'm like, this is actually scary as a content creator. The fact that they can go out and police you wherever you're at. And then it wasn't just politics either. It wasn't limited to politics. It was also art. People were having their accounts pulled down because they posted lewd art someplace else. It wasn't Patreon funding that art. It was they would put on a Google Drive or something somewhere else. But
which is funny because Patreon, everybody joked that how you make money on Patreon was porn.
I know, right? But if it's anime style porn, that's bad.
It could be underage. Then you got a problem.
Yeah. So my feeling on this has been, since this situation, this has been going on for like 3 or 4 years now, is we don't put our eggs in a basket with a broken handle.
And not just that, it's so nebulous. They don't even tell you. People have asked what things can be violations to make sure
they won't give them.
They won't tell you.
They won't tell you. You should know.
That depends on that day and how we feel and who you are.
Depends on who flagged you and for what reason, and your viewers' personal opinions of you. So, got to give a hat tip to our friend Sarah who sent this over. I don't watch these YouTubers, so I didn't know this is going on. But we're going to talk about it because we have done several videos talking about Patreon. But before we get into it any further, I'm going to ask you to support us over on Clownfish Studios. We haven't made a big deal about this yet. We're ramping up our creative content. We do have another channel, Clownfish Studios, which has Clownfish Gaming, and we're going to be putting all of our art and comics content over there. This channel is not going to have any news or opinions or anything like that.
Maybe some jokes in the video.
Some jokes. Oh my God, jokes.
It's mostly just we have fun over there.
Yeah.
And actually, at this point in time, it's mostly you and the kids.
Gaming, yeah.
Yeah.
Just, But we do have a membership program over there, which we're going to use to help fund more creative endeavors. And, we just want to have fun. That's our intention. The reason that we talk about the politics isn't because we want to talk about politics. We talk about it because it has become an obstacle.
It's woven through everything. You can't avoid it.
You can't avoid it.
If you want to talk about a movie, you can't without talking about politics because they're all connected.
But you can go to clownfishsupport.com. It will take you directly to our membership over there, and it's going to work, similarly to Patreon, but it's going to be done through YouTube. No way in hell that we're ever going to use Patreon, and I don't know enough about that Subscribe Star thing or some of the other alternatives. It's kind of like, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about this. So Sydney Watson put a video up, and she got banned from Patreon. She asked Patreon why they decided to ban her. They didn't answer. They note here that they take into consideration everything you do outside of their platform.
Yeah, it's bad. So it's like, okay, so say for example, you get like a credit card or something, right? And on another credit card, you went and bought something that they didn't like on that credit card. Has nothing to do with them. But they cancel your credit card because they didn't like that you used another card to buy something else.
This kind of happens, though. True story. Years ago, I got laid off from my job.
But that's different because the income changed. I'm talking about just using a credit card.
Right.
Somewhere.
But it was weird because I never reported that they knew. Like, they knew I got laid off.
They didn't have time to.
No.
It was that day.
And I was not behind on any of my credit cards or anything. But somehow they knew, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're canceling your card because we think your income's changed.
And then they demanded all the money right then.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell? Like, my credit was fine. And then, so, yeah, I mean, there definitely is some, these banks talk to each other and whatever, but you're right.
I'm just saying, it's like, usually that's not going to be the case. Like, oh, this is Visa and we're canceling your Visa because on your MasterCard, we saw you gave $5 to something we don't like. And so we're canceling this credit card because of it.
Meanwhile, in Canada, if you give to certain platforms, certain people, they'll cancel all your money.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that, yeah.
Honk, honk. Yeah, so toot, whatever. Anyway, it's happening there too, though. You're seeing that, they're starting to go after banks and payment processors for people that they don't like. The collective they don't like. And, Patreon is not safe. I don't care if you're political or not. They could change their terms of service on a whim.
They don't even tell you what the stuff is
they
half the time.
Tell you what's
even when people ask, they won't answer you.
I've seen people fund what I believe to be militant groups on Patreon, but because they were the right kinds of militant groups, no action was taken against them. But my God, if you make some fun of somebody's pronouns or something,
someone has a video of you winking at somebody we don't like, so we're taking down your Patreon.
Yeah, and I think it is flaggers. I think people. I'll be honest. I think
go get a job.
Go get a job. Why are you spending all day flagging people?
Everybody and their brother has openings because people aren't going back to work. Maybe instead of sitting on Twitter all day looking for things to be pissed about, go get a job.
There are lots of jobs out there. I'd hire you, but you're batshit crazy. So
I wouldn't. You're batshit crazy.
If you weren't batshit crazy, I might hire you.
That's probably why they can't get a job.
Yeah, this platform can hold your money hostage if they don't agree with what you do everywhere else. And this is known. This has been going on for like 3 or 4 years now. So here's what Patreon sent her.
Maybe they need to get a class action lawsuit or something to be like, you need to make this, you need to be more clear.
Somebody did sue, I think, was it Sargon? Somebody did sue them, but I don't know what happened to it. Anyway, Blair from Patreon. Thanks for reaching back. While I understand this can be frustrating, any removal is a result of a thorough evaluation by the team.
Okay, fine. Prove that.
After making such a review, we concluded that, per our guidelines, your content propagated what we consider to be negative stereotypes or segregational content toward a protected community. When reviewing, we take into consideration that the content shared on Patreon, as well as any activity taking place outside the platform. That's the problem. If Patreon had rules in place that said you cannot post on Patreon anything that does XYZ thing, right? That's one thing. If you're using their platform to post content that they've already told you, we don't want this kind of shit on our platform, that's one thing. The problem with Patreon, this goes back to so many other people that have been banned, is that they take into consideration anything you do anywhere else on the internet.
But what I'm saying is, we consider, I don't know what she did. I don't know what she said or whatever, because I don't follow her. But somebody could just as simple as say that they're going to vote a certain way they don't like. Well, that's considering that you're segregational content and negative stereotypes because people in the protected community don't like that person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't know what was said, and she might have said something really shitty. I don't know.
But if she said it off of Patreon,
Right.
and the Patreon money is not bankrolling shitty comments somewhere else.
And a lot of those are very nebulous. Well, what negative? Define negative stereotype. Define segregational content. Define protected community. Define how, I'd be like, you have to prove I did these things in violation. In what way? That's an actual provable thing, not just a nebulous statement.
Well, here's somebody else, and she pulled up an example. It's a High Impact Flicks, pop culture, I guess. I don't know who this is, but said that they actually gave examples of files on other platforms, videos on other platforms that got them banned. And this is Ray from Patreon. So they banned High Impact Flicks. They said, following our policy update concerning medical misinformation, Patreon can no longer support accounts that repeatedly use unfounded or debunked theories to argue against broadly supported public health measures on COVID-19.
Okay, wait. I have words, though. Okay. Define medical misinformation, because what was considered fact one day was considered not true the next. And then 3 days later, it might have gone back to that. It was all over the damn place. And then a lot of things that were labeled as medical misinformation have since come out in documents that it turns out it wasn't medical misinformation. Like example, I had female issues after taking the shot. I was called all kinds of names on Twitter when I was asking anybody else had issues. My doctor said that there were a lot of women coming in with very similar concerns, and they are looking into it because there is a definite number to equal something that they thought was significantly worth investigating. Later came out that they started checking into it because so many other women were coming forward, and now in the medical and documents that are out, they released that they knew that there were a lot of issues with women that they reported they knew about it. So that would be labeled as medical misinformation, even though it's not. So medical misinformation, again, is a very nebulous term that basically means anything that's against the COVID vaccines that we don't like.
Pretty much.
But if you're looking just as even somebody who was for vaccines, because I was vaccinated, the information changed sometimes daily.
We were told at the beginning that you get that shot, that COVID's going to bounce right the hell off of you. And
97% effective.
It was going to end the pandemic. It was going to bounce right off you, and that was it.
And at any given time, if you had made a comment on it, like 3 days later, they'd say that was medical misinformation. So that's a very nebulous thing. And based on debunked things. Well, what debunked things? I mean, I don't know what was said. I'm just like, it's another case of, it's a very nebulous thing.
Well, here's the thing. They're basically, so they went out and checked out this user's social media elsewhere. Again, these are not things that are on Patreon, right? We've got a file on Odyssey. We've got something on the Google Drive, and we have a t-shirt. I took a look and reviewed your creator page today. In order to bring your page back within guidelines, kindly review and remove any and all content that advances COVID-19.
Well, at least they gave them a chance to get it back.
Yeah. Additionally, since our guidelines extend to any projects you fund via Patreon, this means that online content linked to your creator page is subject to our guidelines.
But there's been people who didn't have it linked.
Yeah, there was, like in the case of Sargon, he said something
on somebody else's
stream, and it, as a joke, I think he dropped the N-word or something.
Which I don't even use that as a
joke.
Well,
no, it wasn't even to be malicious. He was basically like, he was trying to make a point, and it wasn't to use it to run people down, as I understand it. But the context was they basically used that because there were people that were out to get him. I guess he was running for office or something in the UK, and they were out to get him, and they flagged that.
But weren't there other channels that we know of, too, that they had said stuff and they took it out of context deliberately and tried to get him flagged for hate speech, but it was taken out of context?
Yeah, there are some YouTubers out there who are very vocally supportive of underage stuff, and they're actually saying stuff on streams, and this came to light especially during the J.K. Rowling situation, and I think they're allowed to have Patreon. They're allowed to stay on YouTube. I'd be like, what the hell?
Oh, because it depends.
Yeah, depends on who you are.
It's a case-by-case basis, which means who are you?
Exactly.
And that's a problem. I mean, I don't know who these people are, and I don't know what they said, but I'm saying just as an overview, some of the stuff that they're getting banned for, the terminology is very, now in that case, they gave them examples of what they were talking about, but it's very nebulous things that, it's something that you could just because that person doesn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we're talking about though, because again, in our case specifically, I can tell you none of our opinions are in danger. I don't think of crossing any boundaries at Patreon, but just out of principle, we don't use them because the goalpost keeps moving. It keeps moving. And I'll be honest. I mean, we've done.
I love this. Reportedly unfounded or debunked or argue against broadly supported public health measures. Well, there was a lot of things that were broadly supported that later turned out to be not true.
Yeah, it changes weekly.
So I'm not trying to make this about that, but what I'm saying is, they're basing it on this stuff. Basically, I can just say what it is. If it's against the COVID vaccine, we're banning it. That's what it is.
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to say.
If you have any doubts or questions, or you question, whatever the flavor of the day is with the CDC or Dr. Fauci or whatever. You are banned from Patreon. Yeah.
Basically, is what that when you cut the chase.
Yes,
that's what it's about.
But yeah, I mean, we have done multiple videos about Patreon, and it's not just political stuff; it's art stuff too. And I'm just telling you, this is an opinion. You can do whatever you want, but the platform is unsafe. It's you're putting all your eggs into a basket with a broken handle.
It's unsafe in regards to the fact that they could just decide tomorrow. People were talking before how they were holding their money or they weren't paying on time. Yeah. It's just because it's very nebulous. And if someone doesn't like you and they run to Patreon and complain, and they'll go find something that you did on something else. It could even been not even recently. Well, until you remove that.
3 years ago, you said something on the message board and we didn't like it. So you're a hate monger. Here's the thing too, Patreon just long term is not sustainable. They've been kind of coasting off of venture capital, and this is actually Jack Conte, who's the boss of Patreon, has actually come out and said we're not sustainable.
Well, they try to get themselves valued at some really high number. That was
some
that's
ridiculous
not worth
valuation.
That.
They're jacking their fees up. Then they had to try to get creators to come back.
Oh yeah, they had a commercial.
I mean, this has been going on for the last couple of years now. If you're putting all your eggs in the Patreon's basket, and there are some people that do, they depend very heavily on Patreon. I'm like, you need to diversify, because I think that shit's going to get shut down eventually. I think they're going to get absorbed into something else, or I mean, there's really no purpose for Patreon anymore, because so many other platforms, the platforms themselves, have ways to directly support creators. You don't need Patreon anymore. They're just grifting, taking money off the top.
And then they have the audacity to get mad at you about things you don't even do on their platform.
Yeah. So it's not worth it. It's not worth the hassle. Are we going to wrap this up? Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.